Well, Jim, thank you so much. Such an important topic today. We're going to talk about concussions and head injuries at the high school level and have a heck of a panel with us. First, Commissioner of the CIF Southern Section, Rob Wigod, joins us. Kirsten Ferrell, Athletic Training Coordinator, Division of Instruction for LAUSD, and Dr. Ken Cooper of Cooperstown Chiropractic in Fullerton, California. I appreciate all of you for joining us. First topic, and I think we can just go around the horn with this one. And Rob, I'll start with you. Where are we with athlete safety at the high school level in 2022?
Well, thank you for having me. And, in response to your question, I would say that I think we're safer than we've been before. There have been a lot of things done in the area of concussion awareness, concussion protocol, been a lot of changes to playing rules and things done to try to make the game safer. We've had things such as limits on the hours of practice that can be done each week. We've had limits, if you're talking specifically about football, actual limits on the amount of full contact that can be allowed each day at practice or throughout the practice week. So I would like to believe that we've had a lot of different things over the last several years that have come along to try to make student athlete safety even better than it had been. Our coaching education program now includes not only concussion awareness and protocol, but it includes heat, illness, and hydration. It includes sudden cardiac arrest. It includes, obviously, the first aid and CPR. So our coaches are being trained in a lot of different things as well to help with student and player safety. And I just feel like it is safer than it has been. However, there's probably and certainly more work to do.
No question about it. Kirsten, from where you sit, what would you say?
I would agree with Rob with the fact that we are making strides forward. But I think as a state overall, California has a ways to go. And I will be really happy when we're able to have a certified athletic trainer in every school site that can be the first responder to all of these injuries that kids have, especially around concussions, heat illness, and sudden cardiac.
Dr. Cooper, obviously you see all types of athletes from pros to high school. But where would you say we are at the high school level?
I agree with both the commissioner and Kirsten about what they said. My concern is not just football, because statistically, in 2019, 15% of all high school athletes, all sports, self-reported at least one concussion or more. So we still have a long way to go, and we have to be looking at even some of these other sports, mildly contact sports, things like soccer, women's water polo. That's one of the craziest ones for me, because there's a huge accumulation of young girls that are having this problem with playing water polo.
It's a great segue into the next topic in question, because you mentioned it. It's not just football. I think football is the first sport you probably think of. But Kirsten, when we talk about soccer and let's say water polo, like Dr. Cooper mentioned, how difficult are concussions to prevent when you don't have a helmet, when it is another sport?
I don't think there's any 100% foolproof way out there to prevent a concussion. I think folks need to understand that it's an inherent risk to playing sports. It's more important that once we know a concussion has happened, that it's being properly diagnosed and then properly treated, especially around the adolescent brain and how important it is still in its development, that we're really recognizing the injury and treating it in the right manner.
Rob, from your seat, we do talk about football and head injuries, but soccer, let's say women's soccer or boys soccer, the concussion rate there is probably at a point where you want to get that down, correct?
Well, that is correct. And I agree with Dr. Cooper's comments. He's right. The statistics prove out virtually every year that there are actually more concussions in soccer than there are in football. There are talks about certain rules changes. There have been talks about taking the head out of the game, meaning that some of these concussions actually happen with students heading the ball. but also looking at some kind of protective head covering, headgear that could be worn soft type of headgear, not helmet type of headgear, but maybe something like that would be allowed to be worn or part of the required game uniform, so to speak, so that the students would be better protected. So, as I said earlier, there have been some advances and been some progress made to make student athlete safety even better than before, but still more work to do. And I do want to also echo very quickly what Kirsten said. She's right. Certified athletic trainers being on our campuses is a huge part of that too. And we're part of that with the California Athletic Trainers Association and others, trying to make sure that we can get certified athletic trainers on our campuses, because they are absolutely essential to helping students with student athlete safety.
Rob, high school football is underway. A couple of weeks ago, college started. The NFL started this past Thursday. There's so much excitement around the country for football, right? It feels like NFL is still king in the U.S. But I look at the high school level, and you see participation in high school football. It's been a pretty steady decline. It looks like since 2015, according to the NFHS, you've seen participation in the state of California go down. Do you see that as specifically head injury related? What can you attribute that to?
I see what you see, and you're correct about that. We have seen a steady decline over the last several years. Some states, interestingly enough, around the country have not. They've seen football numbers either stabilize or even improve and get more students out for football. But I think that we need to do a better job of educating people on what has been done in the sport of football with, as I mentioned earlier, the changes that have been made in the playing rules and also the concussion awareness, concussion protocol. We have a specific bylaw where a student who has sustained a concussion or concussion type symptoms would be removed from play immediately for that day and then cannot return to play until a minimum of 7 days. And they have to pass several protocols and be cleared by a licensed healthcare provider before they can return to play. And that can't be done in less than 7 days from that initial diagnosis of the concussion. So things like that. I'm not sure how much people are aware, parents are aware that we have made some real progress. So I think there's still fear of injury in football and still fear of what could happen and what they've heard and read about things like CTE and other things of repeated head trauma can do to students and so forth. And as I said, all we can try to do is continue to make strides in the playing rules. There's no more helmet to helmet. There's targeting. There's no more blindside where students are running down the field and getting blindsided anymore. All of that has been legislated out of the game and certainly helped with player safety, but there's still more to be done.
Kirsten, what are you hearing from parents in terms of questions and concerns about the sport of football or maybe another sport that involves the head?
You hear a lot from parents. They're worried, they're concerned. And I think the more we learn about concussions, the more we can manage them and treat them appropriately. And Rob has said we're striving to make football as the safest possible game out there for kids to still be a part of. But there needs to be partnerships with parents so that they can fully understand the progress that we're making to keep their kids safe, as well as allay their fears of long-term damage and long-term effects of a potential head injury.
What about you, Dr. Cooper? What are you hearing from parents and even students about, am I safe on the football field?
Interesting. From the parents' perspective, the biggest thing is the absence of having an athletic trainer at some of the high schools and having the absence of an athletic trainer at practice. Where my boys went to high school, they went to Servite High School. There was an athletic trainer there at every sport, every event, every time. And I thought that that's the way it always was. But to find some parents going like, yeah, this happened to my child, and there was nobody around and there was nobody to take care of them. I think that's a big step. And so I love the fact that Miss Kirsten is teaching now on a big, broader scale these people to be athletic trainers throughout their whole district. That's brilliance, because that's step number one. We got to identify these things and get appropriate care instantaneously. And then the second thing, from the athlete's perspective, and you covering the NFL, like with the Chargers, this, guys don't want to be taken out. They will do whatever they can to get back to the field. And, it's to the point where, I've been in positions where I wasn't in charge, but I just went on the field and took a helmet, just carried a helmet with me and held that helmet, because there was no way that kid was going to go back on the field because I was holding the helmet, And so I think there's a lot of concern still.
And I think there's that balance too with, coaches too. Coaches want to win, but at the same time, they're teachers and educators too. And you have to be very smart when it comes to kids. And, being around the NFL, Rob, one of the things that we've certainly taken notice of during training camp was the NFL's implementation of these guardian caps for specific position groups. And, I've seen guys wear them in the past, but it was mandated for positions this year for the first few weeks of camp. When you see a league like the NFL taking those strides, making it mandatory, do you envision a trickle-down effect at the high school and college level? And what's being done at the high school level in the same vein to maybe use that technology, gather the data, and maybe make the game even safer?
Yes, and I've seen those too. And actually, our schools, if they wish to, could be wearing those in practice right now. I think one of the things that we've done with our rules is you are only allowed 90 minutes of full contact in a week, and you're only allowed no more than 45 minutes on one particular day. And so we tried to do that immediately with the amount of time and ability to really have full contact. But then another step to go forward would be to look at things like the guardian caps and to make sure that there's data that supports the use of those to prevent injuries, during practice. But the thing about practice is that's a controlled environment. You get to control that environment as a coach and so forth. And that's really important because obviously game action is different. And so I think we are always in favor of anything that will help with student athlete player safety. And if guardian caps are things that become more widespread and utilized more in practice, then that certainly would be something we'd support.
Kirsten, as a trainer, what are your thoughts on the guardian cap and similar things to try to make things as safe as possible, knowing that you can't really control everything once you hit the field?
Right. And I'm in support of anything that has data behind it that actually proves that it's safer. But then when we're also talking about the kids at the high school level, we're talking about an economic cost. And when you look at the support that our college teams and our NFL teams get regarding budget and medical care versus what we get at the high school, there has to be a balance between it being proven useful and the cost that could be to families and schools.
Dr. Cooper, I want to ask you about ways to treat and recover from concussions, but real quick, you brought up a great point. Not all schools have the financial resources to get guardian caps and things to make the game safer, Rob, yet alone just helmets. There's certain schools that need uniforms. How do you best manage that? The challenges being that there's so many kids, even though participation is going down, there's still a lot of kids playing football, and it's hard to have the proper equipment, I think, to make the game as safe as possible.
Well, again, I think our schools, if we have issues of making sure that we have proper equipment, it all has to be recertified each year. Every helmet has to be recertified every year. The shoulder pads have to be recertified, reconditioned every year. So when it comes to the equipment, obviously we are mandated by rule to do those things and make sure that what the equipment is used is actually made sure to deemed safe for all the students. We have challenges in raising funds and challenges in keeping programs going. And certainly I know that we hear football coaches talk about they need 10 more helmets or they need to get more equipment for students. And they certainly don't want to turn students away because they aren't able to have enough equipment for them. So it does continue to be a challenge and something that our schools face all the time. But I think, again, the commitment from them, their schools, their school districts, hopefully we don't see any students that aren't able to have access to playing the game because they just don't have enough equipment for them.
Thank you for that. Dr. Cooper, you've helped treat and help people recover from concussions. What are some of the best practices that you've seen?
Well, so I did quite an extensive amount of study, and I was asked to take the most recent research and make it functional. And so that's what we did. And so we used kind of this championship level thinking and elite expectations and applied this to the concussion game. And there's a couple of things that in the healing that we identified. Number one, there's a correlation between the visual tracking and scanning of a person's eyes and their recovery from concussion. There's also a connection between what's called their vestibular balance, how balanced they are. So it's very interesting because we look at why is it that a person that sustained a concussion that wasn't fully corrected has almost a 2 times greater possibility of having like an ACL tear or having a shoulder labrum tear. And it's simply, we think about that running back gets the ball and he's going through the hole, but because his eyes aren't tracking appropriately, he doesn't see this other player coming from the side, and he gets hit in a way that he's unable to protect himself. And so our protocol was designed very specifically to correct those things and help the brain. Now, the one thing about the brain we have to know is that after concussion, a lot of kids or a lot of people, adults, will have a headache and have pain. But the nuance you have to understand is the brain has no pain sensors in it. What has pain sensors in it is muscles or blood vessels. And so when you have that headache, those will definitely cause a lot of pain. But when the brain is in trouble, that's going to show more like brain fog. And that's going to show things like mental and emotional changes and depression and temper and inability to concentrate and focus. And those are going to be the things that we're going to dial into and identify, are those things happening even on a subclinical level, because that still tells us that there is inflammation happening inside the brain.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting. Dr. Cooper, I know you have more best practices. Where can people find those if they want to learn more?
We would go to our website. It's called concussion.solutions. And that's really where the doctor would look. But then for a parent or a player, it's Cooperstown, like Baseball Hall of Fame, CooperstownChiro.com. And we have a whole section on concussion and concussion rehabilitation.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Last question for all three of you. And, we're talking about concussions and head injuries because they're a serious deal, but, football is the ultimate team game. It brings people together. There's so many life lessons that young people can take from the game, and not just football, soccer, water polo, competitive sports. It's the fabric of, I think, a lot of high school kids' life. They'll never forget their moments in high school and competing. Rob, saying that, how much more do we need to educate our parents and children that, hey, we're taking strides to make the game safe, and we want you to feel safe so you can enjoy these moments?
Well, you're absolutely right about what the value of what we call education-based athletics is. And it's the classroom outside the building, and it's where the students learn the life lessons that you spoke of. So you're right about the fact that we just need to keep educating people about what's been done, that we are aware of concussions, protocols, awarenesses, making sure that students are safe when and if they receive a concussion or sustain a concussion, and how we can safely have them return to play. And as I mentioned earlier, heat illness, hydration, sudden cardiac arrest, all the different things that we are training our coaches to be aware of and be certified in those different areas so that they can have faith and trust in the educators that coach these teams and work with the young people, are trained for it, ready for it, and want to keep student athlete safety the number one priority. And that's the way it always has been, no matter what. It's not winning and losing. It's student athlete safety is number one. And we believe that. And I know that our professional educators believe that. And so we're willing to do whatever's necessary to make sure that's the case. And as I said, we just have to do a better job of letting parents know and everyone else out there know that that's really where we are coming from and our number one priority.
Mm-hmm. Kirsten, the importance of education.
Mm-hmm. The education is huge. I've always said that there's a whole nother world of education that happens after that 3:30 bell. When you start talking about athletics and the lessons kids learn playing every sport. I think it's also important for parents to learn that they can be a partner in this advocacy. They can start to learn what a certified athletic trainer is and advocate at their school site if they don't have one. They have a very strong voice when it comes to athletics, and they should be allowed to use it to help take care of student athletes.
And Dr. Cooper, I'll give you the final word.
Thank you. I have two boys, and both of them played high school and college football. So, I fully believe in that, that understanding of what a team does and how we bring that together and make, strong young men and women because of their athletics. But my spin to that, though, is that, preparing for these types of events, preparing the body, the mind, the brain, helping so that in these kind of conditions, things are, easier to resolve, and sometimes that's even as close to looking at as like your diet. And both of the other guests have talked about hydration. That's huge. Hydration is one of the biggest things. And so, when we think about like, how do you prepare? How do you make sure that what you're putting into the body is what's going to help the body heal itself when it gets hurt or sick? I think that that's something that we can do better to educate, but that's something that we specifically help educate our practice members on so that they really fully understand that.
So much valuable information here from our panel over the last 25 minutes. Dr. Ken Cooper, Kirsten Ferrell, and Commissioner Rob Wigod. Thank you guys so much.